Well, it's flu season, and it's a bad one. The flu is widespread in 47 states, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is reporting that flu-related deaths have reached epidemic proportions.
Right. 88 New Mexicans have actually been hospitalized so far, and that compares with just 2 cases this time last year. And while this year's influenza pandemic may be one of the worst outbreaks in recent history, doctors say you can protect yourself.
Okay, Dr. Stryker, we are hearing so much about the epidemic nationally right now with the flu, but here in New Mexico, we're facing our own set of problems. Tell me a little bit about that right now.
Well, in New Mexico, we're seeing a lot of influenza. We're also seeing norovirus, which is a GI virus that causes diarrhea. We're also seeing some pertussis, which is a disease that causes a chronic cough. And all 3 of these are, I don't know if they're in epidemic proportions yet, but they're definitely raised over normal.
Okay, so when we talk about things like I'm getting a bad cold or I'm getting the flu, how do we know the difference?
The flu is a cold on steroids, basically.
Okay.
It's a cold that causes a lot of systemic symptoms and can be complicated, particularly in older folks, by respiratory failure or in young children or other immunosuppressed
So
individuals.
as an adult, you know, we're trying to stay away from all of these people at work that are getting sick around us. What are some of the symptoms we need to look for to be aware that we are, in fact, on the verge of getting the flu?
Generally, people with the flu have a high fever,
Okay.
particularly higher than you get with a cold. Tend to have a lot of body aches and pains, but you have some of the same symptoms as a cold, like runny nose, sore throat, cough. Cough is usually not really productive, but it can be.
So when we get these symptoms and we realize it's time to take care of ourselves, what is your best advice? Do we go right to the doctor? Do we try to handle it on our own? What's the first step in getting better?
It's probably best to try and get better on your own first. For one, doctor's offices and emergency rooms are quite busy at the moment, and you'd be waiting. And you might be exposed to someone else with similar symptoms from a different disease while you're waiting. So if you're not feeling too bad, just taking some over-the-counter medications and resting and lots of fluids and staying away from everyone else is probably the best thing. If, however, you have persistent illness, if you get worse over time, temperatures over 103, 104, your pulse stays up, then it's time to go see somebody.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the antibiotics that are often prescribed, because I know sometimes people maybe shy away from them or they rush to get them. So once we get to that stage where we know it is time to see the doctor, what can you tell us about an antibiotic, and should we get one?
Well, antibiotics don't do anything for viruses. So you don't use antibacterial drugs like erythromycin or Z-Pax or penicillin, that sort of drug.
Okay.
What does work is a group of drugs called neuraminidase inhibitors. Tamiflu is the most common, but those only work for influenza A. So it's worthwhile knowing what you have, getting a culture to see if you actually need something.
Okay.
If you've been exposed to people with influenza A and you have similar illness, then you should be treated empirically. If you're quite sick, and again immunosuppressed or elderly or very young, you may be put on that while you're waiting for test results to come back.
Okay.
But I would avoid other antibiotics. They're just going to make you worse, cause more complications.
Thank you so much for the valuable advice, and we will take your tips, and hopefully we'll all stay a little healthier this season.
I hope so.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Great advice from the Dr. Stryker, and tomorrow on New Mexico Style, we'll tell you how to protect your child from the flu and how long to keep them out of school.
Well, still ahead in our second half hour, we'll tell you about a new app that can show you how drinking can affect your looks, plus more weather, traffic, and hot topics.